What's wrong with you people?
Welcome to Not Another Baptist Podcast. My name is Matt Hensley, and I am joined by my goateed brother from another mother, the bearded, receding hairline king himself, Kyle, non-alcoholic beerman. And if you're looking for theological education that includes both academic challenge and hands-on ministry experience, we suggest Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary. Wherever God calls, Southwestern Seminary wants to help you get there, and the best way to experience SWBTS is to attend its Spring Preview Day on March 31st, which is quite literally next week. So you need to hurry up, brothers and sisters. You get to see firsthand all that Southwestern Seminary has to offer, and during your visit, you'll get to tour the campus, speak with faculty, chat with students, and experience the unique campus community of Southwestern Seminary. And I hope while you're there, you get a taste of some good Texas brisket and barbecue. You can register today at swbts.edu/preview. And Kyle, I can't remember if we recorded after my Disney trip, but I am back. And more to the point, I am wishing that the World Baseball Classic was still going on.
Oh, man.
That was absolute. Like, I was just like all of it. Any of those series or any of those games that I watched, every single one.
Yep.
Even Great Britain with like their iron-on logo. All of them, I would have been fine if they did like a 5-game, or maybe even like in the early stages, like a 3-game series and then a 5.
Yep.
But that final, bro, I could have taken Japan versus America all season long and loved it. And the fact that it came down to Ohtani and Trout for the final bat. Oh my gosh. I mean, you couldn't script it better. And of course, it's probably scripted anyway. So anyway, that was really cool. I did kind of feel bad. I was like, man, Ohtani and Trout are going to go back and be like, hey, we need y'all to trade us today, because I had fun playing baseball for the first time in my life because I was around a good team. And so
my favorite thing was a tweet that said something about, the Angels have been beating each other for years, beating themselves for years. So, oh man. I followed the World Baseball Classic since the first one in 2006, and it was kind of slow to gain momentum. Like the first couple were fun, but okay, this is just kind of a cool exhibition. And I mean, up to this year where you had, some guys saying, I mean, if they had to pick between a World Series or the World Baseball Classic, they would choose WBC because they have their country's name on their jersey. And I mean, it just seemed like the energy level, especially these last two in 17 and then this year, it's amped up. And yes, I understand it's an exhibition. And yes, there are some questions because of, some injuries that happened to some pretty significant players, one of them being Jose Altuve.
However, can I just say that happens every single year?
Absolutely.
Spring training.
The Edwin Diaz injury, tearing his knee while they're celebrating
in spring training. Yeah.
Right. But that happens in regular season, right? I mean, we see the same thing could happen in the clubhouse. You step wrong and you tear your knee. I mean, those things happen. Outside of the Diaz injury, everything else, Freddie Freeman, I think, kind of tweaked a hamstring, and there were some questions for a while. Altuve broke his thumb. Those are baseball injuries that, you're right, could just as well happen in spring training, that we've seen happen in spring training. But I think the WBC is so good for baseball. And here's the thing, like, there's some talented folks from all over the world in countries that you wouldn't think of being kind of a baseball powerhouse. Yeah. But man, it was fun.
And I liked was it the Czech Republic, that their like entire team were like normal guys like you and me. I don't think they had AMSs or NAM plant gurus on their team, but they did have like a teacher and a fireman and all. I was like, that just to be able to.
And there was
those guys is so cool, man.
Yeah, there was like an electrician who struck out Shohei Ohtani and then like got a signed jersey and a picture with him. And I'm like, dude, like, imagine going back home and like, look, no matter what else happens in my life, I struck out maybe the best baseball player in the last 50 years.
Yeah. No, nobody truly tunes into this for our baseball thing, but I will say I saw on Instagram the other day somebody got a signed baseball. Well, it was the guy that he struck out or whatever, signed baseball because of the pitch clock deal. And it was like like first strikeout by pitch clock or something like that, and took a picture of it. I was like, dude, that's so annoying. And so part of me was like, I liked the WBC because there was still the shift. There was no pitch clock.
Yep.
It was just the best players in the universe playing together.
Yeah.
And it was also cool. Like the difference between the American team and some of these other countries is like obviously our team loves to, they're doing the salute thing, all that kind of stuff, but we weren't up at the top of the dugout the entire game cheering at the top of our lungs and all of that kind of stuff. We were business because that's just what we do. The other ones are
Yeah.
like playing like for their life. I mean, just loving every
Yep.
ounce of it. And so a lot of cool storylines. We enjoyed it. And I also like, I don't know, I had this thought that, spring training, when Trout is going there and playing with all of their double A, triple A guys, whatever, is not necessarily improving.
Yeah.
But he got surrounded by the all-stars,
Yep.
of America and playing against the all-stars of America. So they're not taking at bats against triple A, double A, all that kind of
Yep.
stuff, guys that are in there. They're out there with the best of the best across the globe, versus being at spring training. So I was even thinking for them, it was better. And then for the people kind of left behind that maybe weren't to that level, they were able to get a few more reps and all that kind of stuff back home,
Yeah.
and maybe get the spotlight on them that Otani is going to have or whatever during
Yep.
spring training. So it was just cool all around. We had a good time, and it was cool to have like some meaningful baseball in the middle of spring training when
Yep.
you get on there to watch, Jose Altuve have like two at bats or something, So it's kind of cool to get to watch full games that are right down to the wire and so many close ones and storyline. Like anyway,
Yep.
hey, we are taking a break to from our like, I don't know, Bart said like 140 part series of
How
why.
to kill a podcast is that what we're doing?
Yeah, I think it was just seven, Bart. Not to argue with the Pope of the SBC, but we're taking a break. We might come back to that because Kyle is writing more of those. And today we're going to talk about something that I hope is going to be helpful, maybe fun. I don't know. But three things that pastors should know about every kid in their flock. And I think we should go ahead and make, the little point that if you're in a church of 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. One, you're probably not listening to our podcast. Two, you probably cannot possibly know every child in your deal, but maybe a significant chunk or some key ones, whatever it is.
No.
But this needs to be maybe the trajectory, something you're aiming for, a few things that you should try and know about the kids in your group, the teens, the young people, all of that kind of stuff. And because all of these things should be self-explanatory because they're members of your flock and you're the shepherd. And so you should probably know a bit about them, just like you need to know certain things about your church members. And maybe that's another topic too. And I think all of these would apply to that as well. But number one, shocker, know their name. Know a little bit about them. Know their basic info. Their baseball card stats. Know where they go to school. Know
Yeah.
their basic info. Know what they're about. That kind of deal. But few things, Mark Halleck. This is based on Mark Halleck's article on your blog. Few things are as powerful as knowing and using someone else's name. I struggle with names. Full disclosure, I barely remember Kyle's. But it's so meaningful when you're walking through, the grocery store and you see a church member and you're like, hey, Kyle, how's it going? Like there's a connection there beyond just, hey, brother, hey, sister, the obvious, when you don't know their name type deal, but to know a child's name, someone that may not be on the worship team, may not have any kind of leadership possibilities yet in the church. We've talked about getting them involved in various ways, but to be able to have them show up at the church and be like, hey, Johnny, how's it going? That kind of deal. That's very meaningful. Let's talk about that, Kyle.
Yeah.
Know their name and basic info.
Yeah, and so obviously this is easier in a normative sized church than it is in a mega church. However, I'm going to go out on a limb and say we don't have a ton of mega church pastors that tune into this every single week. Maybe
Jack
a few.
Graham. Jack Graham is hanging on every
Yes.
word that you say. Believe me.
But so I'm going to make an assumption, and especially since, 90% of SBC churches are under 250, that you, if you're listening to this, you are probably in a normative size church. Um, and so this is easier to do, obviously, in smaller congregations, right? To know kids' names, and then, like you said, basic info, where they go to school, how old they are, um, maybe who their parents are. Um, and, and again, as Mark said, don't underestimate the power of just knowing someone's name. I, I had she wasn't a church member, she was a visitor several years ago when I was in Alamogordo, and I saw her in Dollar General. And I mean, we were in the same aisle, and I just said hi. And I mean, that was the extent of the conversation. Like there was no deep counseling. It was literally just hi, and I called her by name. And she actually sent me a message on Facebook later, and she was like, "It meant so much that you knew my name." And I was like, "Well, yeah, like of course I know your name. I didn't think it was a big deal, but it was a big deal to her that I, in a public place, kind of outside of the normal context where we saw each other, I knew who she was. And the same is true of kids. And I would say this, man, if you run into kids from your church in the store or at a basketball game or a football game or something like that, make a big deal, right? I mean, say, hey, call them by name. How's it going? Good to see you. Maybe you haven't had a chance to meet their parents yet, especially if they're like a Wednesday night only kid. Hey, is this your mom? Nice to meet you. I'm the pastor. Make a big deal about that, and that will make a lasting impression that you know who they are.
We haven't made it to the end of this list, but it's something that kind of stuck out to me when we're talking about their name and knowing them, like truly being their shepherd, that kind of deal. And we're going to dig into what that looks like in these next two. But I think this bears maybe a fourth point. I'm not arguing with the article by any means. These are great things, but maybe this is how you can do these deals. So when we talk about preach, pray, love, and stay, be able to stay long enough, one, to develop these relationships enough to know their name, all of that kind of stuff, and some of the stuff
Yeah.
we'll talk about, but also just imagine the power and the impact of being the guy that's giving them their first Bible when they're going into first grade,
That's
like a
good.
lot of churches do, that is the one baptizing them, when they make a profession of faith, is the one that they see every summer doing the vacation Bible school, the one that occasionally pops in on their baseball, t-ball games and cheers on them by name. And we'll talk about what they enjoy in the next one, that kind of stuff. The one that is there for them during some of the crises, during the student years and so forth, the one that's there on graduation Sunday, the one that's there when they get married. What a treat and a privilege, not just for that child, but for the pastor, when 10 years in, 15 years in, they start getting some of those wedding ceremony opportunities of some of the first children that they were giving Bibles to. And to
Yeah.
be able to do a wedding ceremony when you've walked through all of that stuff with them, led them to Jesus, and know, like, where the marriage counseling isn't like, hey, let's find out what's are you even saved, that kind of deal, but you've seen them and
Yeah.
discipled them for so long, and they know you and you know them. Is so impactful. So just a
Yeah.
quick note, like, stay long enough for all of this kind of stuff to maybe be second nature, but you need to have some intentionality to know their name, know their info.
Hey, I tell you what, I know Bart has absolutely nothing else on his plate, but it would be a lot of fun to have him on sometime to talk through the longevity and staying. He's been there 20 plus years,
I've been
married.
trying to get them to leave for a year and a half.
So I'm sure we'll have him on at some point to kind of talk through New Orleans stuff as we get closer to the SBC. But put that on his list too, as you're
Okay.
like, I know you're basically his like executive assistant or whatever. So
Yeah, let's not put that evil on me, because I don't want to bear any responsibility for things that he says or does or doesn't do. But number two, not just know their name, know what they like, know what they enjoy. I touched on this, like being the guy that occasionally goes to the t-ball, that kind of stuff. If they're playing the instrument, hey, how's the piano lessons going? You're going to do a special at church sometime soon. If they are drawing pictures and that kind of deal. Especially those that I had a lot of kids back at Mayhill that would draw their sermon notes, and I would like display that in my office, and it showed that I valued their input in the sermons just as much as somebody that would write
That's
out,
good.
whatever points I made. So know what they enjoy. Talk about that, Kyle.
Yeah, so I mean, you're gonna have kids, even if you have 10, 15 children in your church, you're gonna have a wide variety of interests, right? So you probably have some that are into sports, doing basketball, baseball, football. You probably have some who are very into video games. And my kids are a little bit older. I don't even know like what the hot video games are for like small kids at this point. I'm assuming it's not Madden 97 anymore, sadly. Um,
Nope.
but but no, yeah, know kind of what their hobbies are. And then you can find out, hey, if they're really into like this YouTuber or whatever, maybe go watch a couple of videos and that'll just give you a way to connect. Um, I can guarantee like if you have a kid that's into that and you just bring up Mr. Beast, like you will be a hero in their eyes.
Which
Um,
forever, by the way, I thought was LA Beast, maybe rebranded himself. LA Beast was a guy that I used to watch. He like did all the food challenges and would eat like these massive
no,
hamburgers and stuff, like kind of like the an online version of Man versus Food type
okay.
stuff. And so I kept hearing and seeing more of Mr. Beast, Mr. Beast, and like he was with Tom Brady or something like that. I had no idea. I'm thinking this LA Beast finally made it, man. And then I saw the picture. I was like, oh, bro, that's
Now,
somebody.
now, Matt, have you ever had a Mr. Beast burger?
No.
Okay. So it's a secret kitchen. You can only order it like DoorDash. You can't like go to a place and get it. We have one here. Um, it was the most disappointing, hyped up burger I've ever had. On par with In-N-Out. That's all I'll say.
There goes our
But it
California
was fun.
listeners.
We got it when our kids had COVID and they were like quarantined at home, so we DoorDashed it and they were super excited and so yeah, it was a
Yeah.
thing. But
And kind of the sidebar to this, a corrective here is maybe don't poke fun at the things that they do.
ooh,
And
that's good. Yeah.
like I I think we've talked about your boy that will, watch people play video games in my sheer like amazement at why. Like
Yeah.
why in the world would I want to watch somebody play a game, and like don't use that as your sermon illustration for like wasting time. Like, like
Hey Matt, what do you do in your evenings between the months of April and October?
me,
Yeah.
yeah, every night.
Are you watching someone else play a game?
Shut up. That's a good point. But yeah, it kind of goes like with Easter. Don't make fun of the
Yeah,
Christmas and
that's right.
Easter people that show up. That's your audience. Like so, knowing what they enjoy, don't just poke fun. Watch any losers play video games today late. Like that's not how you want to lead the conversation.
Yeah, no.
What have you been watching lately? That kind of deal. Uh, third
And
step.
and and I think you probe that, right? So you want to get to know him more. Tell me more about that. What do you enjoy about it? Why is that? What keeps your attention for hours watching somebody else play it? And
Like,
they, yeah,
could you imagine like it becoming a thing for pastors to just like watch a live stream of somebody studying a sermon? We kind of got a glimpse of that with like John Piper doing the when we look, or looking at the text or whatever it was that
yeah,
he did, where it would be like the big screen and the text was up there, and he was just essentially doing this Bible study on the go, which was like
yeah.
how he would come up with sermons and so forth. Like that'd probably be super insightful, and we would totally nerd out over it
Oh, absolutely.
until we would see somebody like Bart that like has his Greek New Testament open and is there without any helps whatsoever and is translating it on the fly while writing a 25 tweet thread and making a call to, somebody for a nomination. Like then we would be like, yeah, we don't know what we're doing. Anyway,
No.
know what they enjoy, celebrate those things, ask them about them, see why, that kind of deal. Maybe watch some of that stuff so you can have those conversations about it and so forth. um I know Jared Wellman, they did the Easter egg deal on like Minecraft. Maybe wasn't
Oh
this
yeah.
huge thing at their church, but it's a huge community, the Minecraft thing, all of that kind of stuff. Like know that, ask about it. Number three, know where they are spiritually. Like the name, enjoyment, all that, like that's how you're a shepherd. But obviously the key part of that is discipleship and leading them forward
Yeah.
and towards maturing as Christians. So you need to know where they're at spiritually. And you really should aim to have that for everybody in your congregation, from the oldest of the old to the youngest of the young. You need to know kind of where they're at spiritually. Have they been saved? Have they been baptized? Are they growing? Are they plugged
Yeah.
into small group? All of that kind of stuff. This is how you're effectively able to shepherd your children and their parents and their grandparents and everybody else in your church. So talk about that, Kyle.
Yeah, so I mean, you're not going to be able to know everything that every single child is walking through in their life, but you can at least know, have they accepted Christ? Have they been baptized? Have their are their parents a part of the church on a regular basis? Is there any kind of spiritual formation happening at home, or is that only happening when they're here at the church? You can know these basic things about the kids in your church, and then that helps you to know what they need from you as their pastor, right? And and so I would say, I mean, how do you get to know these things? You spend time in your kids' ministry. Now, that doesn't mean that you're having that you, as the pastor, need to teach a children's Sunday school class perpetually. It doesn't mean that you need to necessarily teach the Bible study at VBS every year, but you need to be present. We've talked about this as it regards student ministry. Pastors need to be present in the student ministry, maybe teaching from time to time in there. And I would say the same thing is true of children's ministry. You need to be present. So when VBS is happening, be out there mingling with the kids, find some way to be involved up front, and then drop in on the classes and just see what's going on. Interact with the parents when they come in. Um, and and get to know your kids' names, what they enjoy, and then of course where they are spiritually. Have they come to know Christ? Are they close? Are they struggling with that? What's hindering their spiritual growth? All of these things are so important as a pastor.
Okay. I'm not even looking at the time to see where we're at time wise. So we might be getting long. I want to just give some simple kind of application points for these simple ways that you can make this happen and maybe come a little more naturally. If you find yourself on one of these three, like not really good at it, that kind of deal, let's just give maybe some practical things you can do. Number one, when you are trying to know someone's name, my kind of pro tip there is, and start like one of the things that Cameron did really well. And of course, he's a student pastor, that kind of deal. So, but Bart has been there much longer. But Cameron's trying to build these relationships, that kind of deal. We had one of those little Polaroid kind of it wasn't Polar, it might be Polaroid, I don't know, but it's like those little bitty square Polaroid pictures.
Mm.
Everybody that came in, if you're a visitor or been there forever, you were supposed to take a picture, put your name on it, and we put it up on the board. And so even I, who am volunteering in there and trying to get to know some of these, I'm looking at that regularly, kind of put a face with a name. So maybe if you have a church directory, a lot of people are moving away from that. That's a great place to start. But one of the simple things you can do is just regularly to say, hey, don't be afraid to say, hey, remind me again your name. I struggle with names. I'm trying to remember your name. Tell me your name. Is it Johnny? And it's not Johnny or whatever. Or if you kind of know the name, associate it with something. And like G, our Gracie, she had glasses, and so that was a way that our pastor was able to remember G for glass, because we had four of them, and they all kind of looked similar, and so we tried to connect those with things. So have some pictures, some ways to connect with them. Do you have anything there?
Yeah, no, I think pictures are huge, because then you don't just have a list of names and then all these faces that show up, and you've got to put them together. I think you're spot on. That's the best way to do it, is to take, and I mean, they've made new Polaroid cameras. So you can literally do a Polaroid camera now, print it out, put it on there. You can do that digitally with a phone, and type in like the text on their picture real quick. Obviously, if you're going to do that, you want to get permission. Don't just
Yeah,
start taking
yeah,
random pictures
definitely.
throughout the church. Get permission to do it. But no, that I mean, so in our church foyer, we have names and pictures of new members. We have one of our deacons who, that's his responsibility, is he'll take new folks' pictures, and then they put them up throughout the week on a bulletin board.
What if you have some staff, secretary or youth director, or whatever, y'all get together regularly. and you already have some pictures or developing this, and again, get the permission. Don't be the guy that's walking around taking pictures with his iPhone or something like that. Could be weird. But if you have the means, remember when we were doing seminary and trying to learn Hebrew and Greek, and you had like the word on the front and then on the back the definition or noun, adjective, whatever it was. We worked really hard at it.
Ooh,
What if
flashcards.
like
That's a good
every
idea.
staff meeting, you essentially make a flashcard on these? On the front, it's the picture of the family. On the back, it's their name, who, the dad, mom, kids, whatever. And then y'all just quiz one another. And
Ooh, that's
whoever
good.
gets like the lowest amount has to buy lunch that day. I don't like, come up with something, make it a challenge of, kind of an in-house thing that y'all are sort of learning, because it matters just as much as Greek and Hebrew, really, because that's who you're shepherding and wanting to get to know. So find some creative ways to do that. As far as enjoyment, a simple, like easy one is find out the schools that are in your town. Typically, certainly if it's, anywhere in Texas above maybe like, A level, I don't know, like right now, I think they all do with max reps or whatever. You can find the schedules of like everything down to cross country in soccer, all of them. And so, throw it on your calendar, and do it at some level of, hey, once a month I'm going to try and pop in on one. When you know that X, Y, and Z is in, T-ball or whatever, holler at the parents, say, hey, is there a time that you're doing the meal after? I want to come and bring, something extra to come with it, and go there and just bless them. As a church, as a pastor, you get to also meet more kids, all of that kind of stuff. But put that stuff on your calendar.
It's good.
When you can, when you got a few days that maybe you haven't, you just want to get out of the office or do something else. Like, hey, high school baseball, football, at least in Texas, is a whole lot of fun. And then softball's fun too, because like you can get a home run off of a walk, man. It's amazing. That's how overthrowing everything else. So put it on your calendar. As far as know where they are spiritually, Mark has a point here of regularly teaching. When somebody becomes a new believer, having that baptism class. But I think another kind of easy one here, if you don't have the regular Sunday school deal or the pastor's class, beyond going occasionally to the youth program, the kids program, and teaching, maybe having just a 1 month deal of like ask the pastor class or whatever. Get a couple of volunteers and just let kids come in there and be like, hey, did Adam and Eve have a belly button? How did the dinosaurs get on the ark? The questions that they're going to ask, they're wrestling with those things that lets you push deeper into the gospel and helps you see where they're at spiritually. So that's one. Do you have anything on either one of those?
No, you're exactly right. Spend time with them, and Mark even in the blog post as well, and we'll link to that in the show notes. Has some great resources. Teach a baptism class, teach a children's membership class, and then man, I love the ask the pastor. I mean, just and you go in knowing you're going to hear anything and everything.
It's like
kids have no filter. It's fantastic.
On Hymn Sings, Stump the Music Minister days, where it's like God of Country and Outer Space comes up. That's the same thing. Get ready. If you're the seminary president, you get the Calvinism stuff. When it's the kids, you get the hardball questions, like the belly buttons and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right. So yeah. So guys, love your people. This really goes hand in hand with the preach, pray, love, and stay. All of these things are connected. When you love your people, you're going to want to know them, know their name, know about them, know where they're at spiritually. Stay long enough. This kind of stuff can have an impact and be the guy that gets those calls to do the weddings, and it's like, oh yeah, let's go, like, and you're able to tell some of those stories of them growing up and so forth, and it's just a lot of fun. That's the fun part of ministry that tends to make you push through some of the more difficult parts, the heavy parts, and the criticism and so forth along the way. So we hope in some measure these three things, or kind of 3.5, were helpful. Know them, know their name, know about them, what they like, know where they're at spiritually. This is part of being a shepherd. And maybe next week we'll go back to our 1002 part series on why churches die, because there's a lot of reasons. And no, it's not their pastor has a beard. Barton Barber. So, Kyle, anything else before you send us out?
No, hey, thanks for listening. As always, if we can help, reach out to us social media. We want to be a resource for you as well.
All right. Well, may your coffee be as black as night. And as bold is my prediction that the Astros will win their third World Series this year.
What's wrong with you people?